Hi, Elliot here. Welcome to the Power of Mysticism. We are living in challenging times, for sure. More challenging than ever before. And that means the opportunities are greater than ever, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I just want to first return to 2020, just to make note of how 6 years ago we were all so very different. Back then, I was noticing with the lockdowns and everything that were happening, I was noticing that the world had become a spiritual gym. And that's where we were 24/7. It was an opportunity for us to take all that we had learned in the years before and apply it. It was a chance for us to just really become more spiritually mature than ever before, to really grow spiritually. And Sonia Choquette said in an interview back then in 2020 that the rubber had hit the road. And I feel like that's the same thing, spiritual gym, rubber hitting the road. So for the last 6 years, we have been, and I think it's important to acknowledge it, we have been working out, we have been becoming more spiritually mature. The last 6 years have really prepared us for February 2026. And if you just look back a year, I'm sure that you will be able to acknowledge that you'll find that there's a huge difference between your capacities, your availability to God, your spiritual maturity, who you were. A new self has shown up, I'm sure. And the new self will continue to show up and continue to be something we can rely on. The true self and the presence of God will be here for us as we continue through 2026. It's really good to acknowledge where we've been and where we are and where the path has taken us. One of the things we might want to consider is relying on the spiritual resources that are available to us. They can help us recharge our batteries. They can remind us of the truth. And I love the new scriptures that have been showing up. Course in Miracles. I count that as a new scripture. I think that the words in that book are holy. I count A Course of Love as new scripture, Choose Only Love, The Way of Mastery. The list goes on. Perhaps you've been turning to other new scriptures. And that doesn't mean the Bible has to be tossed out. I do open the Bible with an openness and also with questions about whether or not what I'm reading is poor translation, and so on and so forth. I do trust the parables that Jesus told. And one of the parables that I'm in love with is the parable of the prodigal son. And I feel like that parable can speak to us more profoundly and more powerfully right now than ever before. It certainly is a fresh breath of air for me right now. I look at the prodigal son the younger son who left his father. He asked for his inheritance from the father and was given it, and had a period of time of riotous living, and then he ended up living with pigs. He was feeding the pigs, and then he returned to the father, and was warmly received by the father. I think the father was seeing him as innocent, fully 100% innocent. I think the father was seeing the prodigal son's true self when he approached the father. He approached with the intention of becoming a servant for his father, and his father said, "No, you're my son." And he said, "No, we're going to have a feast for you. We're going to celebrate your return." And, all of us have moments when we are going to the far country, going far away from home. And all of us have moments when we come back to ourselves, when we come to our senses, when we say it would be better to be back home, and then we make the trip there. And whether it's the face of Kuan Yin who you see, or the face of Merlin who you see, or Jesus, it is a welcoming face, a delighted face. Divinity is happier than we can imagine if you want to personify divinity. happier than we can ever imagine when we return home. And of course, there are stories out there that say that we never left home. That when we go back home, we discover that that's the place we've always been. In any event, one of the wonderful things about this parable is that it continues from there. The older brother is invited to join the feast, and he is in great resistance to that. He thinks it's entirely unfair. He's very bitter because here he was staying at the farm, at the house of the father, contributing to getting the fields planted or whatever it was they were doing. And now the prodigal son comes back from wherever he was, and he gets a feast, whereas the older brother never got a feast. So that is such a stark contrast between the father, who I'm taking to be a person in this case. It can go either way. The father can be God or a person. And so those are two people, if you want to look at it that way, who have totally different reactions and responses to the son's return. And I can certainly relate to the bitterness that the older brother has. I have had that conversation with God so many times about how life is so unfair. In my youth, I was bitter 24/7. I was walking through New York City watching people go to these expensive cafes I couldn't afford. And oh my goodness. So that is our choice point right now. We can choose to respond like the brother did in that parable, or we can choose to respond like the father who saw the son with sacred sight, with the same vision that Kuan Yin always, always sees us, and with the same compassion that Kuan Yin, and the same mercy that Kuan Yin always brings to us, always flows to us, every instant, always available for us. Now, there is one thing in this parable that I just realized right before I turned the computer on, and that is that there's not much said at all about the time in between when the son left the house, the home, and then became employed as a pig feeder. It just says that he engaged in riotous living in some translations, which is a vague term. We don't know what he was doing. And maybe it doesn't matter how out of integrity he was. Maybe we don't really need to differentiate between being off-center by stealing money from somebody, just $10 from a parent or a guardian, and doing something much more severe. In certain contexts, at least in the context that is helpful to return us to integrity, to let us have a way to make room for God so that we can let go of the betrayal, the sense of betrayal, let go of the confusion, let go of everything that would keep us away from home. It may be important to allow the time period in that parable between leaving home and becoming a pig feeder to remain unknown, to just be a question that we can sit with. And it might help us to become more accountable in our own lives, to just know that either we are living in totality or we are not. So that's all I have for today, and I look forward to the next one.